Hello friends, it's your girl Veniece Antoinette
and Amomo Chanel
here with another episode of
Sip and Spill.
And today we have a very special guest.
My name is Jon Chambers. I'm a poet / author. I just released my second book, My Poetic Truth Part 2. I actually have a copy for each of you. I appreciate the hospitality and allowing me to come to the show. I also go by the name of Chains when my poetry is in the form of rap music, so some of you guys might know me as that. But my book is available as well as my music on chambersthepoet.com, and there's a lot of other things on that as well. A couple things I'm working on, a home decor business that I'm starting where I incorporate some of that poetry into home decor using photography and things of that nature. Something called Wordstock Revolution I'm working on, which is like for freelance writers. So definitely it's a platform for them to sell their services. So definitely check out chambersthepoet.com. It'll hopefully be in the link below.
Absolutely.
So also on social media, my Twitter is Chambers the Poet, as well as my Instagram is also Chambers the Poet.
Alright, so make sure you check out his book, and we'll have all of his information in the description box down below so you can find him, follow him, and support him. Alright, so Jon is here to talk to us today about
dating someone opposite of you. Do opposites really attract, or is it easier to just date someone that's more similar to you? Stay tuned.
Stay tuned.
Alright, so let's start out by asking our guest, Jon, what do you think? Do you prefer to date someone opposite to you?
I think the answer is a little complicated, and it's because I do believe that on some level opposites attract, but on some level you also have to there has to be some similarities, right? Like you have to have the same values
at the core, right?
Yeah, you have to have the same values at your core. You have to have the same long-term goals, not necessarily the same long-term goals, but similar enough to where if you're going to be in a long-term relationship, there's not that rub that you would have already known you're going to have if you knew that you guys weren't on the same same page long-term wise. But in terms of personality-wise, my girlfriend right now, Tanisha, I consider us to be personality-wise opposites. But I think it works out because we're both mature enough to really understand who we are as people first and foremost, and then when it comes to, I mean, we all have strengths and weaknesses as human beings. So if somebody's the opposite of you personality-wise, your strengths are going to be their weaknesses and vice versa. So when you're in a relationship with somebody, I think that becomes beneficial once you are mature enough to understand that it's going to be beneficial, and you're able to learn from the lessons that somebody being opposite of you could actually teach you, and you're open to those lessons, as opposed to just being so stuck in your own head and trying to find somebody that's exactly like you, and oftentimes that doesn't work out anyway. And I think in a true relationship, I think opposites do attract on some level, but I think in each relationship it's going to depend on like what those levels actually are in terms of what's the same and what's opposite. But there's definitely, I do think opposites attract, for sure.
What do you think, Venice?
I don't feel like I've ever dated someone that was like an opposite. Like, I've dated people who we may have had like different interests but I don't think I've dated someone who I think was a personality opposite for me. So I don't know. What about you?
I think I've always dated people that were opposite of me. Like, I'm more, like, I guess, laid back and calm, quiet sometimes, and I always end up with the person that's like usually more out there, louder, like the center of attention most of the time. So I don't know, but then again, I'm not in a successful relationship, so I don't know.
Yeah, that's funny you said that, because that's one of the things that me and my girlfriend have, because I'm more reserved, I'm more of a quiet person generally, so but she's always been like more of an outgoing person, more friendly. So I think that combination of the two, like I don't necessarily want to be in a relationship with somebody who's as reserved as me. That would be, it would kind of get boring.
Right.
So and another, like I'm not really a planner. Like I like to go with the flow, and a lot of times, I mean, that's admirable to a lot of people that don't have that ability to just go with the flow, because it's like a lot less stressful. And she's more of a planner, but at the same time, it takes the balance of those two, because sometimes you do need to plan.
That's true.
So like she helps me out with making sure that things are planned out properly, and I can help her out with the going with the flow part of it, to make sure that it's like we can set a plan, but we don't have to follow it to the T. Like when things come, we can make adjustments as things go along. So I think that's where the strengths and weaknesses kind of start to balance out a little bit.
So what's the pros and cons of dating someone who's the opposite? We'll start with the pros.
That's a good question.
Well, the pros, I think, are, like I said, the strengths and weaknesses thing, to where you're always able to find, you're always able to increase your weaknesses, and to help. There's always an outlet to go to. If you're the same person, then if you're struggling with something and you have an inherent weakness, it's kind of hard for that person to support you with that if they also have that same weakness. So that's definitely a pro. As far as the cons, I think that when you're dating somebody that's different from you, the con is that if you don't fully understand them, there's going to be a lot of disagreements, and there's going to be, especially if you're not mature enough. And I made the statement to you guys before we went on air that if me and my girlfriend tried to date when we were like 18, 19, I'm pretty sure it would have failed. It would have failed, because I don't think either of us had reached that level of maturity to where we would be accepting of another person that was that different, and we still had a lot of like growing to do on our own, to where if we were put in a situation where we had to face our weaknesses head on at that stage in life, there definitely would have. So that's a con, right? So if you're not mature enough, oftentimes that can lead to a lot of disagreements, and a lot of it can end very badly. But again, that turns into a pro when you're mature enough to take those on and take those challenges. Because a relationship, you're gonna argue, you're gonna have disagreements, no matter what your personality type is. But it becomes more of a challenge when you're opposite. But in addition to a challenge, it also becomes more fulfilling in the end, because you learn so much more than if you're just getting over a disagreement among somebody that you're so alike with that you're dating yourself.
Yeah,
right. That's true.
I definitely agree with you.
What do you think the pros and cons are?
Well, to answer your question with the pros and cons, I think definitely one of the pros is when you date somebody that is different from you, it's kind of exciting, because it's like, they think this way, like, I never thought about it like this. Like, or, it's just a different experience from what you normally, what your normal routine may be when you're experiencing with somebody opposite of you. I would agree with the cons. Definitely just, you definitely have to think outside of yourself, because you may be mad about something in a situation, and you may think, oh, well, I would have never done that, but as a person that's different than you. So you definitely have to be able to take yourself out of the situation and think, well, they're not me. This is how they think. This is why they did that. So I definitely see where the maturity comes in. What about for you?
Well, I mean, I don't date opposites, so I don't really have. That's why I asked Jon. I don't really have an answer to that question.
She's like, I'm not
I've never been in that space. I mean, I've been in spaces where I felt like I've had, like I said, different experiences from somebody else. But personality-wise, I don't think I'm like. I feel like a lot of people, or not a lot of people, but it's a misconception that a lot of people are one way or the other. Like, they're either reserved or they're not. For me, I feel like I'm in the middle. Like, I don't think that I'm completely outgoing, but I also know that I'm not completely reserved. So, for me, I feel like I'm in the middle, and I think I attract people who are also in the middle.
Okay.
So, we might be different on different aspects of, like, they might be reserved on this side and I might be outgoing on this side, but then I might be reserved on this side and they might be outgoing on another side. So
that makes sense.
That's why for me I can't really say.
So do you think there would be an opposite for you since you're in the middle? Like, do you think anybody would be too reserved for you or too outgoing for you?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I've come across that, and I've never been interested in someone who was too on the left or the right. Like I think I attract people who are in the middle. Like when I'm first meeting someone, I am more attracted to someone who comes off more reserved, but I still like someone who can still work a room.
Okay.
So.
Interesting.
And there's always gonna be like that. Like you can't go complete opposite. Like, like you have to have the same value systems. Like you can't. We're not gonna date like a white supremacist or something like that. You know what I mean? It doesn't make sense. That's complete opposite value systems. So, but
and like you had said earlier about you and your girlfriend, how you go with the flow and she's a planner and I'm both. Like I'll easily go with the flow, but I can also be the person to set out the plan. I'm like right in the middle. A lot of the successful relationships I've seen, and what I mean by that are people who've been married 20 or more years that I've seen growing up were opposites. Like even when I think of my mom and dad, they are legitimate opposites. Like sometimes I think to myself, what do they have in common? Because I'm like, they are so opposite. And then I think about like my aunts and uncles. And I think it's a good thing because the relationships I've seen have worked out when they were opposites. What do you guys think?
I agree. I think that makes total sense.
Definitely. No, I definitely see the same thing in terms of long-term relationships and people that have been together for a while, because you see the and that's another thing. Like no matter how opposite or alike you are on paper, there's always that chemistry. There's always that unseen factor that you can't quantify on paper, right? So I do think that long-term relationships that I've seen, they have that chemistry. They all have that unseen factor, but a lot of them are, like you said, opposites in how they carry themselves, how they address people, and in terms of how they act in a crowd. And you're like, how did they even...
How'd you even meet?
How did this even come together? Like, how did the universe allow, like... but yeah, it ends up working out. And you see that, and that's where the saying opposites attract comes from. You know?
I also think they balance each other out very well. And I think that's why it lasts for so long, because I think, like you said earlier, it comes in after you mature, you realize what your weaknesses are. So when you date someone who's your opposite, they help your weaknesses. So I think it's like a balance thing too.
I can even say, I've mentioned on the show before that my parents are divorced. I can call them like for some advice or tell them something. They will literally verbatim like reply, give me the same reply. They're so similar, but they're not married today. So I don't know, maybe they were just a little bit too similar. But they don't think that they're similar. That's the funny thing.
They don't think they are?
They're total opposites.
That's interesting.
People from the outside can see.
And I'm the opposite, where I call my mom and dad on advice. I'm getting two complete different answers. So sometimes I'm like, oh, let me call my brother, maybe.
So how did that work? Like growing up, that means that like when you needed like advice or you wanted to ask permission for something, you knew which one would give you permission for that specific thing because they were so opposite.
But most of the time it was whatever my mom said. So it was like my dad would be like, "What your mom said?" I'm like, "I didn't ask her yet." Like
you ain't asking for a reason,
But yeah, they were like, especially growing up, like when I was living in Philadelphia and I was working in the finance industry. I remember like just talking to both of them about my decision of moving back home and like how I felt about work and how I felt about like just living in Philadelphia, period. And they always had like opposite advice, but their core values were the same. So it was like they were telling me overall the same thing. They just had opposite ways of going about it.
Right.
That's funny.
And that probably helped in terms of when you're raising a child, that probably, because they get both sides of the spectrum. So no matter what your strengths and weaknesses are, one of them can speak to it, like one of the others. So I think helps in parenting as well.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So have you ever seen any like long relationships last where the two people were the same or very similar?
I have, but
Okay.
I think it's also kind of to your point where on the outside, their personality wise, they might be similar, but there's those factors that we can't really see that where they know that this other person can help me with this and I can help them with that, when they know, because they're in a relationship and when you get to know somebody that well. But I don't, like, I have seen it, but I'm sure that there's some levels where they help each other out. In successful relationships, I feel that there has to be that level. And in terms of, especially if you're going to grow from it, which is ultimately what a relationship's about, growing and maintaining a relationship through all times. And you can only do that by understanding where, because nobody's exactly alike. Nobody's exactly similar. So when you know somebody enough, you can pick up on, you have to be able to pick up on the similarities, even when you think that, oh, this person is just like me.
Right.
I think when people get in relationships for that reason, not that they don't last, but I think when people get in relationships for that reason, oftentimes they find out quickly that that wasn't true, that they weren't exactly alike.
Right.
Like, as you get to know them more, certain things come out, and certain things, the way you might handle certain situations, you'll see that there's still, on some level, you still have to be able to look at somebody else's needs in addition to your own, and you have to step outside of yourself and have a certain level of selflessness.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, on the outside, me and my girlfriend could be considered alike because we like to go to the same places. We enjoy the same like type of activities. So if you're just watching from the outside, then it would say like, oh, they're perfect for each other. They both like to do this. They like to go to vineyards. They like to, they like the same music. But if you actually knew us personally, you know our personalities were opposite. So it's often, there's oftentimes things that you just can't see that that only the people in the relationship or people that know close would be able to really speak on fully.
That's true.
Yeah. And I think it definitely has to be the right things that are different too, like the things that can match up well. It can't be anything that's too conflicting. I guess.
Like value systems and things of that nature.
Yeah.
No, I agree with that. Well, you guys, that wraps up today's episode. Today's lessons. Opposites is a good thing. Opposites attract. Opposites balance each other out. Opposites. Now, if you are in a successful relationship with someone you think is the same as you, let us know, because we'd love to hear about it.
And keep it going.
Yeah, I was going to say, keep it going, but we definitely want to hear about it. Because for me, I can only think of mostly opposites that I've seen that are successful. But thanks so much to Jon for coming through. Again, all of his information will be in the description box below. Make sure you check out his book. We will definitely be checking it out.
Absolutely.
And thank you so much for watching. If you haven't already, make sure you hit that subscribe button and give this video a big old thumbs up. Also, every Thursday, 9 p.m., check us out on Facebook Live, where we'll be going live, where you can come in and join in on our discussions where we talk about different celebrities and relationship topics. So thanks again for watching, and until next time.